This old-time radio podcast you were listening to was originally recorded live, long before we knew what the hell we were doing. As a result, you may detect a surface noise or volume drop due to the fact there was 9 of us and only one microphone to go around. We hope, however, this any variance in audio quality will not take away from your pleasure listening to this, one of the all-time most interesting episodes of the Comic Indie Podcast. I again am Daniel. Please enjoy.
Comic Indie Podcast. Comic Indie Podcast. Comic Indie Podcast. Comic Indie Podcast.
Welcome to Comic Indie Podcast. I'm Ken Javier.
I'm Alex A.
Once again, I'm Daniel.
And today is a very special edition. Now, Dan, Alex, I always say it's special, but this one is real special because to the right of me, because this is a podcast, I got to describe where people are standing, is Chet with Pulp 21. How you doing, Chet?
Doing well.
Awesome, Chet. So I understand you were not the executive-in-chief, but you were the editor-in-chief. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and you brought a gang with you today. Is that right?
A little bit.
Do people say gangs anymore, or what's posses? I know that's sometimes frowned upon.
We're a gang.
We're definitely a gang.
Yeah.
Quick
We rolled
design,
somebody
John.
behind GRB about a month ago.
That's right, George R. Brown. Yeah. Let's place the scene of the crime in Houston, Texas.
I don't know. It just
Those are just initials.
All right, so joined with you today is James.
Hello, hello.
All right, not just a writer, but the greatest writer of the Pulp 21 family. Is that?
Oh,
did you
man.
hear that?
Oh, yeah.
Your words.
Yeah.
Your words.
James told me that earlier. He said that. Okay. Followed by the true greatest one, Cammy.
That's
Yeah.
right. I agree.
And you can't have a comic without color, right, John?
That's right.
Oh, all right. See, okay. Well, so this is the Pulp 21 podcast taking over Comic Indie for the evening. Definitely happy and glad that you guys have donned us with your presence.
Thanks for having
welcome.
us.
Yes,
welcome,
thanks for
welcome.
having us.
All right. So as you know, we are here talking about comics. So let's just do that, right? Let's just get into it.
So who wants to discard? Here we go. But okay, let's start with the basics. I mean, where did the idea of Pulp 21 come from? What brought this about into creation?
Well, I met a guy named Richard several years ago on another internet forum. And along with some other people, we got to talking about how we wanted to do some webcomics and whatnot. And that's about that time when that exploded. We gave it a shot. Didn't work out. And that's when I came up with the name Pulp 21. We went dormant for a while. And then everybody started doing print-on-demand stuff. And we got in on that. We put together a comic and took it to a few shows. And then we went dormant again. And then another guy who's done one project with us, John, another John, not the John that's with us right now.
His name is my name
Yeah,
too.
exactly. He got excited about getting into this, and of course he hasn't done any more comics work with us. But he was kind of the impetus. He's to blame for us getting back into this, and we just wanted to kind of make comics as professionally as we understood it, with the production values and the process and the execution, and offer something a little different. Let everybody do what they were really passionate about.
Awesome. So just from personal experience, so you had mentioned web comics, right? Mm-hmm. So Alex and I, Comic Indie actually is Alex's brainchild, and it used to be Houston Web Comics. Is that right?
Webcomic Society.
We were a society of web comics of Houston, right?
It was
And
Houston Comics.
it was so
Was it with
Comic
an X?
Society.
right. Comics.
Yeah, well, it has...
C's and X's.
What wasn't?
So that happened maybe about 3 years ago. And 3 years ago, the Houston Web Comic Society, or were we Comic Indie by then? No, we weren't.
No.
We visited Comic Palooza, and we ran into a very interesting panel, which was the Pulp 21 panel.
Oh,
I
wow.
remember you guys very well.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
And I got to admit, man, you guys were the real deal, and still are, as of today. So, kind of take us through memory lane. And I know, Dan, you weren't with us yet, but in spirit. So, how were you guys 3 years ago versus 3 years ago today? Does that even sound
Today.
versus today.
Yeah. I know. I caught your meaning.
It's a riddle, right?
Yeah.
Books out.
Yeah.
We're in a better place.
I want Chet to answer this.
We're in a better place. We released 4 new books a month ago, which was a huge achievement for us, and especially considering that we were doing an anthology prior to that with everybody just kind of coughing up 6 or 7 pages at a time.
More like
You know.
choking up.
Yeah. It was like pulling teeth. It was really ironic, the herding of the cats was not working well on the anthology, but when we kind of dissolved it and said, okay, everybody, you're on your own, make a comic. We had 4 new books show up. So it was really interesting. Everybody wanted their ego stroked with their own platform, right, James?
Well, honestly, I can know. I mean, as far as the new resurgence of everyone doing their own books, I blame it all on Pizzo. Honestly,
That's a big part of it.
because he's a guy who has his own style. He cranks it out on an efficient level, and he's always doing something and staying active. And he's the kind
Cranking
of guy
comic
that,
books.
yeah.
Let's just be clear, because this is the comic
Well,
indie
I'm
podcast.
saying, I'm just
They
saying, like,
read the comic prior to the interview.
I'm just saying, art.
Yes, he did.
Okay, well then,
Pizzo.
thank you, and I'm sorry, but no, Pizzo is he stays busy. He's always drawing something, and so for a guy like that, he did this small project, and he was just begging for. He was just like, I just need something to do, and I was just like, well, I have the script I've been working on the side, which is like the side project from Bad Acid, which is the other story I've been doing. And he was just like, yeah, give me the script. We'll see what happens. And I gave it to him. And then like a week later, he's like, hey, man, here's a couple of pages. And I was just like, okay, well, I guess we're doing this then.
Okay.
And so it was just like, I need to finish the script. And he plowed through it. And, I mean, it was the quickest turnaround for a full-page book that I've ever... I mean, the 6 to 8 pages we were talking about with the anthology, me and Pizzo cranked out a full 26-page script inside of a year, which
That's
is
amazing. And that book you're actually referencing is While You Were Out.
While You Were Out, correct?
Okay, so James, tell us a little bit about While You Were Out.
Well,
If you were to sell it to us, I'm the man, or we're the men at
Yeah.
the Houston big city comic place,
Sure.
and you want to put it on the shelf next to my Daredevil.
You want
Okay,
to tell
yeah.
us everything about your book, and you want to do it now.
yeah. Well, I wouldn't compare it to Daredevil, but it's definitely more of a cautionary tale of sorts. It's about a maid in Vegas, and it's actually a male character. His name's Grant, and he's a bit of a degenerate. He doesn't have a lot of morals or a place in society. He's a bit of a loner, and he likes vicariously living through other people's possessions, while also skimming your cash and prescription drugs and all that sorts of good stuff. And then his average day is he ends up at the strip club and does all... This is his daily routine. So he's not the best person in the world, but he gets roped in by a femme fatale character, because originally it was supposed to be a noir story before Pizzo got a hold of it and made it just this crazy R. Crumb Dr. Seuss tale. That's now... So, I mean, like, what it was in my head to what the finished product isn't even close to how I imagined it, but I kind of just rolled with it. And so now we just have this really weird cautionary tale about this guy who gets roped into this really bad situation. And it's a lot of fun. There's obviously drugs involved, so we get to play around visually, which is always fun. It's something else. It's different. It's very different.
Yeah, speaking of visually, and I guess the guys and I, we were talking before, and I mean, honestly, we were just like, whoa. I mean, and not in a bad way, though.
Yeah, well,
but
thank
it's
you.
just like, because definitely not the Daredevil of Pulp 21.
No.
But
It's closer to the Sin City of Pulp.
There we go.
Yeah.
There we go. Yeah.
Well, that's exactly, you said it's more like Sin City with Fritz the Cat level of...
That's fair. Sure.
I joked with them and said that you gotta, not as an official tagline, but as a quick sell, call it Fear and Loathing in Sin City.
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, fair enough, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, either way, the point is that this guy who, he's a bottom feeder, if that's the nice way of putting it, I guess. Very easy to please, impossibly easy to please. He doesn't really have any sort of goal, and his background and where he comes from, which is pretty much the narrative of the first part of the book. You kind of get his backstory and where he comes from and learn about why he is the way he is. But meanwhile, you're going through this monotonous daily routine that he finds new ways to make interesting on a day-to-day basis, but in the worst possible way.
Yeah.
That's just the person that he is. He's not a good person, by the way. He's not you're not cheering for this guy. You're just kind of along for the ride. Which
No,
I think,
when I saw the ball gag in the mouth, I was like, that was pretty cool.
okay, so
He gets it. He likes to party,
He's a maid in Vegas, so like he goes through people's things.
Yeah.
Yes, he skims their possessions. He takes his cut of whatever because no one's going to say anything, and if they do, who cares? Because it's Vegas. But yes, he does live through these people's possessions. Everyone goes to Vegas so that they can be or pretend to be who they want to be or who they think they are, or at least not be who they are on a regular basis. It's like a break from their own reality, which is like both the awesome and terrifying thing about Vegas. If you've ever been, I have, and I've seen it. So like it's kind of a break from himself, but he takes this break on a daily basis, because he's living through other people's fantasies or escapism, and he himself is an escapist. So he clearly doesn't want to deal with life. So he has this dead end job,
which
and
is
he goes through other.
In most things that you do.
I know. Yes. Life isn't important to me. I'm sorry. Anyways.
There's a Mr. Freud who'd like to talk about
Yeah. It's like he doesn't want to bang his mom or anything. He's just not a good person. It's not rocket science. Anyways. So he does this thing, and it's the day-to-day grind, but his day-to-day grind is just, he's a bottom feeder. Yeah. And he's cool with it, and I like that idea.
No,
and from that, he gets roped into this really terrible situation.
Yeah,
so.
and again, without giving too much away, it's just like, whoa, I know everybody has a story they want to tell, everybody has a reason for the bad things that they do in life, but, definitely, when you think indie, and this is an indie book. This is an indie book to enjoy.
Yeah.
Indie's not in a derogatory way.
No.
I'm an indie podcast, right? So,
the main thing is
this is something that, and jokingly enough, I didn't say needs to be next to a Daredevil or whatever. But this is a true essence hardcore indie book, and
just from the art style alone,
Yeah.
it's very much the indie quality, the indie sort of perspective, and in the way the art's done.
That's the idea, is that we want to tell our own stories, and we want to tell them the way we want to tell them, and they're not going to be traditional or by the book by any means, and they're not going to be perfect even.
Yeah.
And
but they are polished, though. I will say that it's a nice looking book.
It's nice to hear that as well.
Yeah.
And Pizzo, if you're listening, which you will, because I will make you listen to it, you're going to appreciate the fact that he himself has said, I don't know how many times he redrew the first 5 pages.
Crazy. Yeah.
And the irony is that as surreal and cartoony and wicked as the art itself is, his style, like, he's not used to drawing human anatomy. So when I was like, hey, I got this noir thing I want you to do, and then he started spitting out pages at me, I was just like, this isn't even close to what I had in my head, But I was just like, but when I have an artist who's willing to crank it out and roll with me and, follow the scripts, at least kind of, I'm like, who am I? Like, I would rather, finish not perfect is one of our main mantras that we teach amongst
Not
the crowd.
perfect. All right.
Finish not perfect. You're going to hear it a lot. I don't remember.
I don't remember his name.
I'm a
He's the guy
horrible
that
person.
headlines Inktober. I can't remember his name off the top of my head at the moment.
Well, he's paraphrasing from Lucas, who's paraphrasing from somebody else, who's you never finish your project, you just abandon it.
Right.
Yeah, and so for me, it's just like, I would rather have a finished, critiquable piece of work that you learn from by it being finished to move on to something else. And you want to set those goals of finishing projects. I would, if people can tell me it's the worst thing they've ever read in their entire life, as long as they can tell me why, I can learn something from it. So, like, I would rather have I'd rather have something finished and critiquable than to never finish anything and to stifle myself from actually finishing any projects. So that's kind of the main thing about me and Pizzo, is that he's just wanting to draw, and all I want to do is write. And I appreciate you saying that it was relatively polished, because there was some tender love and care that went into it. But we also were like, we're not going to get in our own way. We want to finish this. We want to move on to the next bit. And we're actually all starting to work on something else, another side project that he actually came up with. And I was like, hey, we're a good team.
Yeah, how's that coming along?
It's actually pretty good. So it's called Domini, right?
Right.
And Pizzo came up with these concepts and archetypes of characters and started kind of drawing this thing out, and he had no concept of the plot whatsoever. So he was just like, hey, I have this idea. I kind of want these things to happen, but I have no idea how to write it. And I was just like, what? Who does that? How do you draw something without having any story first? I was just like, what? So he would just kind of throw all these archetypes at me, and then I was just like, okay. So I've been kind of like spitballing with him, and we kind of like congealing all these ideas together, and that's going to be like another project that we work on.
Awesome.
My goal
are
is,
we going to see this in 12 months?
my goal is to just stay whatever he's willing to work on. I actually prefer juggling multiple projects at once, and I think he would probably also benefit from that because you don't get bored or stifled by drawing the same thing. So drawing my story and switching to like it's like an alien desert planet and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's a big departure from
So like
all you're out.
having that freedom to draw whatever you're inspired by on any given day, I think is a perk to working between projects. But because it's the both of us, I mean, we talk to each other almost every day, so it's nice to have that.
I gotta admit, I didn't realize Domini didn't have a story. I colored the first few pages of it, it just... Typically, I'm handed these pages without script. So I'm coloring it with no text, no dialogue, nothing. And I colored in the first, 6 pages
Yeah.
of Domini?
Yeah.
And it just, everything in it just flowed so well. I could see the story there. I didn't know there was nothing written.
Well,
for it.
there was a plot for those pages,
So,
but there was not an overarching plot for the whole thing.
okay.
Yeah, he just had come up with that starting point is what it was. He had a few loose notions of what he wanted to do, and I took a stab at coming up with stuff for it too, and I think we're going to trade notes at some other point regarding Domini. It's been an interesting collaborative endeavor, between us. But yeah, it's a big departure from what he's doing with While You Were Out. It's very much inspired by European comics. Mobius and the like,
Yeah.
So
Mobius.
See, now we're going to have to hit the professor for this one. So,
Oh, no,
so I'm going to nod at you like, oh yeah, European comics makes sense. Dan,
Okay.
give us the Wikipedia version.
Okay, you're basically, when you talk about a lot of European comics, the best example you get in the States is basically the comic Heavy Metal, which is basically, was originally called Metal Hurlant in France.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when he's talking about Mobius was the guy, he's been around for a long time. Unfortunately, he just died. Sorry. But without Mobius, we never would have had the art style for things like Fifth Element, or if you ever see Jaredowski's Dune, he did all the art for that.
Jodorowsky's.
He's a famous, absolutely amazing artist from Europe. The European style tends to be a little more flamboyant, a little bit more intricate. You find a lot of this stuff in Jaredowski's work, like Incal, which he did work with Mobius, and some of this. And you get a lot more of that, a certain type of flow that you don't normally find in American comics, which tend to be a little bit more cinematic. The European stuff tends to be a lot more intellectual and in depth.
Yeah, it's very fluid and stylized and less.
they produce more comics in the realm of like a graphic novel.
Yeah.
They do 50 to 60 page long albums is what they typically refer to them as, and they're really great about space and pacing. I just read something the other day that NBM is another publisher that republishes a lot of European stuff called Satania.
Oh, that!
And that was really good. That pacing in that is incredible. They're really good about injecting new ideas per page, so you're not bored. You're just flipping through reading this thing. I went through that book in a pretty good clip, and it was a nice surprise. I picked it up on the cover alone, and I got it cheap.
Well, that's the thing. You can find a lot of NBM either really cheap or really expensive in the States because it all depends on how popular it is.
Exactly.
And there's so much that is out here that is NBM, like a ton of other marketers out there that do just really good European comics. Heck, there's one that's called Blueberry, which is a Western.
Yeah, that's Mobius.
Yeah, that is Mobius.
That's
Okay,
Mobius.
okay. I
Yeah.
didn't know
He did it under his real name, Jean Giraud.
That's right, because anything
Yeah.
he does science fiction, it's
It's
Mobius.
Mobius.
But if it's anything else, it's Jean, yeah.
Yeah.
Which they later turned into a movie by the same guy who brought us Brotherhood of the Wolf.
Really?
Yeah.
What was this movie?
Well, the movie was called Blueberry.
Who's in it?
Same guy from Brotherhood of the Wolf. The guy who...
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. It was a European movie.
yes,
Okay,
yes,
okay,
never made it
gotcha.
to the States.
I've
gotcha.
never seen the movie.
Yeah.
We'll have to
I've
do
seen
that.
Brotherhood of the Wolf, but I've never seen
Brotherhood was
Yeah,
good. We'll have
yeah.
to watch that one now.
Yeah, I'll have to hunt that down.
Yeah, for sure.
So that means we have training to do for people who have not seen these movies. But yeah, the European style tends to be a lot more, like I said, a lot more fluid, a lot more intellectual as a whole, and a lot more willing to push a lot of boundaries. And I think that's interesting working with you guys stuff, particularly looking at your book there. That it was kind of let's just say pushing some interesting boundaries there. And
I wish Pizzo was here to envelop.
that new page.
Defend himself.
but by the
Be
same
a
token,
sponge and take it in. They're complimenting him. I wish he was here to
The
absorb
next
it.
down the line, we have
Cammy.
Cammy. Cammy was also at that same sort of variety, though. I mean, if I'm remembering correctly, tell us something about your book and
Talking about Paradise Last.
Yeah.
And so this is Cammy. You're the writer, director, artist. There's not a director, is there?
it's true. Well, I think that's Jen over there.
Oh, the director. No, because he's
No.
the executive in chief.
No.
You had no say. Nobody has.
The more I hear that, the more I like that. Executive in chief.
Executive in chief. So, Cammy, you bring us Paradise Last. Tell us about it. What is Paradise Last?
All right. So essentially, the idea for this is everything you know about heaven and hell is wrong, and okay. So the premise is 4 girls are pretty much on an adventure, road trip style adventure, where they have to get from New York to Texas for whatever reason, and within a certain amount of time, and along the way they end up finding a lot of monsters and mythical type creatures and ancient beasts and stuff like that. Just the whole way, and just the whole time it's just like, okay, so are these bad guys or are they good guys? Okay, what? Who are you? But the story says that you're not. What? Just the whole thing is just unanswered questions and like answering questions that like. I'm sorry. Okay, so you get... I'm questioning myself. Okay, so basically you get one side of the story. You get the victor side of a battle. My hope is to tell the other side of that.
So, like the monsters that they encounter or the people on the trip, you want to kind of see it from their perspective.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Because like you won't know... You'll encounter the monster and most people will think, oh, this isn't a good thing. And then it turns out, okay, so maybe it's not as bad as people originally say. So.
Is it kind of like the Three Little Pigs from the wolf's perspective?
Kinda. It's kind of like that book,
or
but
is it closer to something like Midnight Nation from J. Michael Straczynski?
no idea what you're talking about.
Okay, well,
I'm sorry.
Sorry, add to your list then. Because again, it's another one of those stories of traveling long distances. You never know what you get, but it's also becoming an anthology of the people you meet across in the journeys. But yours is really interesting because, again, you're getting the perspective of the people they meet, and not every stranger is a danger.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. So like, you'll get those cases of witches that you're not sure, are they the bad kind that eat children, or are they the good kind that are like, oh yeah, let me dye your hair for you.
Are you a good witch or a bad witch?
Basically.
So what? So they're going to Houston or they're going to New York?
No, they're going from New York to Texas.
To Texas. I just assumed
Texas is
Houston.
a big place.
Okay, they're going to northern Dallas
They're going
area,
to-
Texas.
They're heading to
Yeah.
The Arlington Fort
Why?
They were trying to get away from the apocalypse.
Yeah.
Okay.
like-
Now,
They're-
We're going
okay,
to
so
Plano.
okay, so they're heading more towards a. They're heading towards a property in Texas, a large property.
Can that be
Texas.
revealed or
Yeah, that's
all
fine.
will be revealed in time?
It's fine. I mean, that's not a huge plot point. Kind of a plot point, but it's not a huge plot point. They're going to a property in Texas, a person's property in Texas.
What is this property?
That I can't talk about.
What? That's what they just said. That's what they just asked.
All will be revealed in time. That's it.
gotta leave that for the trailer.
It's kind of like
Yeah.
Bad Girls, except these are even worse girls.
Well, one of them is worse. The redhead's the worst.
Of course.
Aren't they always?
Freaking gingers.
She's the reason they get into most of their trouble.
So speaking of reasons, why are you writing comic books, or what drove? Not that that's a bad thing.
Yeah.
Just, you know.
Okay.
So why are you writing comic books?
Why have you given up on life? Yeah.
What drove you to this? Please
Right?
tell us.
I don't know about this podcast.
What's holding up your
It's
suicide?
a poor life decision, and we're all about encouraging those.
Don't you want to make money later on?
Yeah,
no,
sure.
yeah, it's,
Yes, actually.
So Paradise Last. Is this your first project, or have you worked on others? Or?
Okay, so this is the first project that I have published, but this is not the first project that I've actually worked on. I was working on another one that I do want to start getting back into, but there's still some plot stuff that I can't seem to make work. But it's basically about a girl who's on the run from evil scientists, because why not?
They're evil.
Yeah.
Why?
All scientists are evil. Everybody knows this.
Especially when they have the big Tesla cannons for no good reason. Putting their fingers in the air every time they say science.
Always wearing rubber
that
gloves.
one was so that one was originally started because, well, like, I got into comics because it was an outlet for me at the time. Writing was my way of dealing with some pretty bad stuff that I was going through at the time. And so it eventually just became, like, I moved in with my dad, and it eventually just became one of those things, like, I actually enjoyed doing it as a hobby. I liked drawing, I liked distracting myself in class and not actually paying attention, being like, oh, this is more interesting. Sorry to admit that to you right here.
That's okay.
Keeping it real on the Comic Indie podcast, bringing families together.
But it eventually became something that I really enjoyed doing as a hobby, and they were my parents were very supportive of me pursuing it as a career. At one point, I had considered culinary as a side thing, but teachers ruined that for me. A specific teacher ruined that for me, but I won't go into. I won't name names.
Names. We don't need the story. Just name the name.
Put them in a comic book, and they're a witch.
Well,
Did you guys see that light bulb?
If it makes you feel better, I actually had dated someone for a while right before I dated my wife. My wife hated this person, so in my next novel, I wrote them in being killed by a vampire and then being called the hemoglobin equivalent of Taco Bell.
Wow.
My wife said, "Thank you."
I have so many characters who are just like, okay, so this person really pissed me off, so I'm gonna go like subtly, but not subtly, write this person into this story, and oh look, they died violently. Whoopsies.
I mean, let's be real. Like, the only reason you become a writer is to kill people.
Exactly. You can't do it legally in the real life.
Yeah.
So.
Sound philosophy.
Like, come on.
Yeah.
Like, let's be
Yeah.
real.
Motivation.
Yeah. Like, I mean, heck, just the past 6 months, I've had plenty of motivation for people I've wanted to kill in my books. So.
So speaking of motivation, what's next for Paradise Last?
Okay, so right now all I have planned is about 10 issues for basically the trip from New York to Texas. And I'm on as much of an adventure as these girls are. I know the basic plot points that I need to get to, but everything in between is very much, what am I going to do next? What are they going to do next? Oh, this is what they're going to do next. That's exciting. So it's as much of an adventure for me as it is for them.
Hey.
Which keeps it refreshing most of the time.
Speak a little bit about your process for producing this and the timeline.
Okay, so...
Because that was impressive.
Okay.
For our readers, I just wanted to just point out the fact that John, her colorist and father, just started dying laughing here. So,
so it was about... Okay, so I had about half the pages done for a couple of months, but I was kind of putting it off until about a month before the actual book, before the actual deadline for the book for Comicpalooza. And then I was still kind of postponing it, and then about 2.5 weeks before the deadline, I sat down and started and cranked out every last page. I colored, I screwed up with some of the coloring, and had to get my dad to go in and reflat every single page in the book. And then I sat down at my computer for...
Good thing he likes you.
Yeah, I love you, Dad.
Father's Day is coming around.
I sat down...
In about a year.
Yeah, it already came and went. What was it? I sat down for a week and a half at my computer at our kitchen table, and I cannot tell you the number of times I almost cried, and then did cry. In fact, I was in tears about 2 days, day before getting it turned into print.
Congrats, you are now a writer.
Yes.
Yeah.
I told this story to my classmates in my creative writing class I'm taking right now, and honestly, to them, I'm just like, if you have not cried over your work at least once, you're not doing it right.
Why else do they make a brandy called Writer's Tears?
Do they seriously?
They actually do. It exists.
But yeah,
Irish
so
whiskey, it's delicious.
so I mean, I would
Who
say
want to drink the tears of other people, though? That had to be a sicko.
Well, as we have a hand up in the corner.
we've already determined that he is
It's earned.
not above anything.
I'm
so.
not above anything.
Well, but that's impressive, though.
Yeah.
It really is. That
Yeah.
really is.
It was a pain. I can definitely after sitting at my computer for that long, I deep cleaned both my bathroom and my dad's bathroom the day after getting it all done. So I had some energy.
Scrub yourself down with steel wool and
Housework is relaxation after finishing a comic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gracious.
No.
Well, I mean, you're sitting on your butt for.
No.
Finish your comic and then come over
Okay.
to my house.
No, see, honestly, it was purely just I felt like I was doing so much in such a short amount of time.
A bundle of nervous energy.
Nervous energy. Do you know how much anxiety I have had since getting that book out? I can't even go into. I can't go into Kroger without my head just starts spinning and I can't just people.
They don't sell it there.
I know they don't.
Yeah.
Lovely today once again, as the publisher writer myself, congrats. Welcome to the world.
Yeah. That was unpleasant.
You survived your trial by fire very well.
Now you get to do it 9 more times, right? That's it.
Well, I did actually get started on the script, story, whatever you want to call it, because I don't write scripts, I just write stories.
Yeah, James, what do you call it?
I roll for people listening. It's something of a legend.
But yeah, so I've actually started working on the story for the second book, and I actually had my creative writing class read it, so they're the only ones who know anything about what's happening in the second issue.
They know before I do?
Yes.
Wow.
It was I cried the night I turned it in.
Remember what we did to that guy behind GRB?
Oh my goodness.
Hey, don't screw with beta readers.
No, you can definitely ask him. I mean, they'll listen to this eventually. You can ask him the night I turned in my rough draft to my classmates, because we had to turn it in online. I was downstairs, head in my hands, crying, because I'm like, why the hell did I just put that on the internet? And it was.
Made, I have to say.
So maybe for the writers out there, and I think you bring a good point, because a lot of the folks who listen to the podcast are fellow creators.
It's perfectly fine to be emotional.
What gets you to cross that threshold? Because personal experience, 3 years to put out a book. I want to do it in 12 weeks. So what motivates you to do that other than wanting to clean?
No, well, actually, the want to clean happened afterwards. I had so much energy that it was like, yeah.
But you realize you have a great maid service going. Frustrated writers and cleaning service. We'll put out a chapter that clean your house.
But really, what would you say to other fellow creators out there? Put it out there. I mean, even though obviously there's a lot of angst, there's still a lot of anxiety. There's some regret, obviously, from the story you're telling. But you still did it, though.
Yeah, I mean, it's really just a matter of if you want. Like for me, it's a matter of I want to entertain people, and I want to entertain people with stories that I am passionate about. Because if I'm passionate about it, you're going to be able to tell. So it's just be passionate about it and go forward. It took me 7 years to finally actually write something.
Just don't drive yourself nuts about it, because there are people who've been doing this thing for years, decades.
Yeah.
And they won't go back and look at things that they produced in the past, because they see all the mistakes.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
Just don't put yourself in a position where we've got to throw you in a
Insane
straight jacket.
asylum.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then the cost of the comic books will really go up.
You might be onto something.
This explains my James Stevens covers.
Yeah, that's going to be a true indie book right there.
Drove the artist to insanity. You've got a selling point there.
That's it.
Unfortunately, you can only sign it with your
great
teeth.
Kickstarter right there.
Now I want to see her do that.
Well, the plan was to take a week off after getting the book out for Palooza, and then the middle of the week, my birthday, I sat down and started working again. It was like the day, two days after
Palooza.
and I sat down and started working again, and
Kudos.
Thumbs up.
Yeah, no, really. I mean, that's
yeah.
that's
You
huge.
did better than I did. I took a whole month off after that
Yeah, I
show.
know. We were
haven't
talking
gone
about it
back
in the
to
truck.
Yeah, not yet. It takes me a while to recover after those things.
Yeah,
Well,
it's-
speaking of writers, and I mean, I want to make sure everyone's had a chance to talk, who wants to talk, and everything else like that. But speaking of writers and creators, you obviously mentioned you do this for the passion, you do this for the story, but as Pulp 21, how do you get involved with this?
What do you mean by that?
Well, okay, you seem to have like a large collection of people who all seem to connect on a personal level,
Right.
producing comics. How does somebody see you guys and, oh my god, you do some great work, how do I,
Get in the group?
Yeah,
Or
get in
maybe
the
even
group.
here's a good question. John, how did you get in the group?
There we go.
That segues very well into that, actually.
I think so as
Yeah.
well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Join us next week as we continue our conversation live with Pulp 21. Well, not live, but close enough. If you are a writer, if you are an artist, if you are interested in independent comics, know somebody who is, or severely wants to let us know about your book and your passion for the book, you can do so. All you have to do is go to our website, comicindie.com, and look us up for available details. Once there, you can talk to us, you can communicate your interest in various books, you can tell us what you would like us to talk about as well. Or if you happen to be interested in an interview, you can let us know there. Also, you can know about the convention that we are putting on in the Houston area, November 3rd. That is the Comic Indie Comic Con. That had no relation to Comic Con. The Comic Indie Con that is going on in Emancipation Park in Houston, November 3rd. More information is available at our website, both if you're interested in joining us or interested in becoming a vendor as well. Tables are still available, though they are going fast. In the meantime, be sure to tune in next week as we continue our conversation and enjoy the adventures that is independent comics at Comic Indie Podcast. I am still Daniel and forever shall be. Thank you and good night.